Hey everyone, it's Justine here, the Twilight Stamper, and I'm bringing you a challenge card for this week using Create a Smile stamps, Botanical Love stamp set. So I'm starting off with a piece of 2 3/4 by 2 3/4 inch white Neenah Solar White 110-pound cardstock, and I'm going to be using this Botanical Love stamp set and this flower. I'm inking it up with VersaMark ink and stamping it onto this here with the edges hanging off. I'm going to be heat embossing this using White Ranger Super Fine Embossing Powder, and I'm just using my Tupperware container here, which was an idea from Jennifer McGuire that I absolutely love, so you don't actually have to have a spare piece of paper underneath and, try to get all the powder back in the jar. So I heat embossed this, and I'm going to go in with my Spiced Marmalade Distress ink. I'm entering this into several challenges, and one of them is an Orange You Glad to Be CAS, so I have to use an orange color in it. And I'm just using my blending tool, starting onto my craft mat and working into the middle of the piece here that I've created, and I'm just darkening it slowly. Speaking of challenges, I'm also entering this into the Simon Says Stamp Add Texture Challenge, and I'm also using the Muse Challenge, and this is kind of the card sketch for the Muse Challenge this week. It's challenge number 105 if you want to play along. I'm going to take this flower piece and I'm going to glue it onto a piece of 3x3 Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm just going to glue that on to create a frame. I'm using some 3D foam tape here and quite a bit of it to add some texture and some layering to my card. I set that off to the side and I grabbed a piece of vellum that was bigger than my card frame here, and I just started to tear the edges. I ended up going through and kind of perfecting it to the way that I wanted afterwards, and you can skip this step altogether if you don't have vellum, because I ended up adding a bunch of texture to the card. So I decided to put it kind of on an angle like that and take those sharp corners and make them smooth. So I think that adds a really cool texture to the card, and I was inspired by the Simon Says Stamp example that I saw. Next, I'm going to take the bubble stencil from Tim Holtz and I'm going to tape it down using some washi tape. I want to make sure I tape it down so that it doesn't move when I'm adding some texture paste. I'm also adding 2 pieces of washi tape along here to mask off an area that I want with the texture. I don't want the texture all over the card because I want to have room to add my sentiment. I'm using Dreamweaver translucent embossing paste today, as well as my palette knife, and I'm just going to scoop some on here and create some texture. Again, when I added and I finished this card, you actually don't see a lot of this, so you don't have to waste a whole bunch of embossing paste. You can just go along the edges and that should be fine. And if you wanted to extend this to be a bit bigger or leave out the vellum, then you'll see it really well on your card. In the end, you don't really see too much. If I went back and did this, I would probably use a white embossing paste. So it's time to remove our mask and stencil, and as you can see, there's a perfectly kind of stenciled off area onto my card. I just cleaned my stencils with a baby wipe directly after use, and that seems to work well for me. The next step I'm going to do is add some glue onto the back of my vellum in the center. And the reason why I'm adding that in the center is because that's going to be actually not shown on the card, because it's going to be behind this frame here that I created. So I stuck my frame onto the vellum, and then I sort of noticed that you couldn't see the texture paste at all if I put that down the way it was. So I decided to rip off some more of that vellum. And again, you could leave off the vellum or extend the texture paste to get a bigger effect with the texture paste, because in the end, as I said, you don't see it too much. So I put that down on there and I attached that to my card. You want to make sure the texture paste has dried, of course, before doing that. The next thing I'm going to do is add the Be Happy sentiment, and I didn't want to use the Spiced Marmalade Tim Holtz Distress ink. Because this ink is mainly for distressing and not so much for stamping, and so what I wanted to do was create a really crisp sentiment, and you're not able to do that with the Spiced Marmalade. So I went on and I used a Simon Says Stamp orange peel. As you can see there, you got a little glimpse of my ink swatch, which is how I can decide whether the colors contrast too much or not. I cleaned off my block and I stamped the Be Happy stamp set onto the bottom right-hand corner of my card. So thanks so much for watching, everyone, and don't forget to subscribe and give a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Come and play along on some of these challenges this week, and a complete supply list and description is on my blog, and that is linked below in the description. Thanks so much for watching.